meeting of the Abington School Committee. Tonight is Tuesday, June 17th, 2014. Ask everybody to please rise and recite.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And now we're going to read the Abington Public Schools mission statement. The mission of the Abington Public Schools is to provide all students with relevant, challenging educational experiences to prepare them to be engaged, responsible citizens and members of the global community. And at this point, we're going to have the material. Just ask that you wait to be recognized and approach the podium. Give us your name.
Hi, I'm Wendy Happel. I'm just here tonight just to reiterate our meeting last month, and then some emails that I forwarded you guys and the paperwork and everything, and just to state that there's some parents that would just prefer that we stay with stay with MCAS over Park, and hope that you guys make the decision that is a good one, I guess. So I appreciate it, and that's basically it. Thanks.
Thank you.
At this point, we're going to move on to the reading and approval of our records. We have the June 9th. This was our meeting prior to the town meeting.
Can I just ask for some clarification? Where it says the purpose of the meeting will be to answer questions on Park and to make recommendations at that time and to give the rationale for their recommendations. What is that?
You're asking me that for the discussion for the before the town meeting, the intention was at that point to talk about the process.
But is this referencing Elizabeth and Meg? That's where I get a little confused, because their presence will be to act as consultants, and then the purpose of the meeting will to answer questions. I thought that's why they're here as consultants, but they're not here to make a recommendation. The recommendations we take are from you.
Right.
It's just a little confusing on that.
Sure. So officially speaking, I'm making a recommendation to you, but I will tell you that I did deliberate over it for quite a bit of time with all of the principals in Abington and the department directors, heads, and Sherry Fedorowicz. So, but I'm making the recommendation tonight. That was part of the process behind the scenes.
Oh, okay. I'm just because when I read this, as far as these official minutes, but
that wasn't discussed at that meeting. I mean, that was the process that I used, but we didn't talk about that. I didn't talk about that process, about how I got to a recommendation. So, does the committee or does someone have a suggestion on how to accurately reflect that discussion that evening?
Or I can delete that sentence too. You can take that.
Yeah, I don't know if do we need that?
Yeah, we probably don't need that.
I think you could just change the word and give the rationale for the recommendation.
I agree. Yep. But there's just going to be one recommendation, though.
Correct.
Right, for
So
the recommendation.
Okay.
to make a recommendation.
Okay.
A or the.
To give the rationale for
The
recommendation.
Or-
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And then, just so I clarify, on the next sentence, as far as Ms. Shaper requested that school committee members' questions and concerns be emailed to him to prepare questions, that in no way, circumvents any open meeting by that request. I just want to make sure that we're okay with that.
Just at that meeting, there was a request that questions be provided that might be shared at the meeting so that people were better informed, actually, about the
Maybe
process.
the word provided rather than emailed be provided, so it doesn't look.
No, I don't mind with the email, but it just so it's clear that we're not, this is, can be a practice of ours if we have questions before a meeting, that we can send it to Peter, and so, it would speed up the process in meetings.
Right, and provide hopefully a better question and answer for the community or for the
Right.
school committee, but there was no deliberation behind the scenes between
Right.
members through email or anything like that.
That's all I had for.
Anything else? So we'd be looking for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We have the minutes from the May 29th meeting.
I'd just like to make a couple amendments to it, as far as under the superintendent assumed temporary chairmanship, that there was discussion included procedural matters, including following Robert's rules for school committee meetings, because that was discussed. I do feel like that's fairly significant. And just from a procedural standpoint, until we have a policy on this, the town bylaws require either the most senior person on the school committee or the secretary to assume the chairmanship, unless otherwise we have a policy.
That is exactly accurate from research that was done after that meeting.
And this didn't come up in the meeting, but as far as on page 2 towards the bottom, as far as Mr. Haggard asked to be recorded that in future school committee reorganize at the next meeting, that's by bylaw, it's supposed to be by May 15th.
Okay. So I can just.
But that was not discussed at the meeting, but I just want to make sure, I don't know if we've discussed that, but I think Ellen brought that out, that it was May 15th. And
That should not be in the minutes because it's not something that was brought up at that meeting.
exactly, right, yes, yeah, I'm just
So
like.
you're not going to add that to
No,
the
no, it's
meeting.
not. No, I'm not asking for that. And then just one other, just on the hearing of visitors, when I read it, Wendy was here at the last meeting, and it said she was interested in the school committee's stance on the implementation of park testing, and then it's sort of left open that we never, responded. And I'd like to just propose that we add the school committee respectfully deferred stating a position on park versus MCAS as the matter is still in flux. Because, we did discuss it, but the way it's written, it leaves open that we never addressed Wendy's concerns. And then just one other thing, on page 4, the top, as far as Kathy Bailey, Mike Rowski volunteered to be on the subcommittee, as far as, did we ever set a date or anything for a next meeting? I just want to make sure that we,
For the subcommittee?
yeah, on the school improvement plans.
No.
Okay.
There was no date.
All right. That's all I have. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So we're looking for a motion to approve the minutes of May 29th as amended.
Make that motion.
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
We have our executive session minutes from May 29th as well.
When she gets back.
Anything? So we're looking for a motion to approve the executive session minutes from May 29th as presented.
I'll make that motion. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And we have the minutes from January 30th. This is our executive session minutes. Need to be approved.
Madam Chair, I have to abstain from the.
And I too, because Mike was absent then.
discussion? Seth? Looking for a motion to approve?
Make a motion?
Second?
All in favor? Aye. In light of tonight's schedule, we're going to move around a little bit from what we have on here. We're going to go right into the discussion regarding MCAS and Park that's on our agenda. And we're going to ask that Sherry Sidoris, Liz Gonzalez, and Meg Doherty come up and join us here.
So, if I could, there's a letter. Yeah, please, for everybody. Sure, everybody, please. Thank you very much. I promise I won't read the letter to you. I'll read parts of it and make some comments, some highlights. Same one, yep. So, as we were made aware at our last, the day before our last regularly scheduled meeting, the Massachusetts Association of School Committees attorney, Attorney Finnegan, published a letter and an opinion that it was Massachusetts school committees that were to determine what tests would be implemented for districts for the 14-15 school year, be it MCAS or PARC. And so over the last several weeks, I appreciate all of the reading that people did, because I believe I probably emailed you thousands of pages if you get into the links and follow the DESE site and the PARC site and the Common Core site with all of the information that was provided. I certainly sent quite a bit. And also on our website there are 8 different links for the community, including a letter from Dr. Gonzalez, or an editorial from Dr. Gonzalez that was published in the Boston Globe. And I should mention the credentials of the 3 people that we have joining us at the table. Dr. Gonzalez is actually a PARC fellow. She's involved in helping to develop the PARC test. And then we have Meg Doherty, who is our director of math, Department for Math, and Sherry Fedorowicz for the K through 6 curriculum instruction director. So we have a lot of help in terms of questions that the committee might have around specifics around MCAS and PARC. But the discussion tonight is really framed for us around MCAS and PARC, not around the Common Core. That's something that Massachusetts adopted back in 2010. And so I have a letter to here dated June 12th. Dear committee members, as you're aware, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, or DESE, has asked school system to designate the accountability testing format of either the Massachusetts Comprehensive Assessment System, MCAS, or the Partnership for Assessment of Readiness for College and Careers, PARC, for the 14-15 school year. And what I have here is a table that's taken directly from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education and a recent publication that they've provided. Basically what they're looking for is a determination of PARC or MCAS for grades, and I'm summarizing this table, for grades 3 through 8, and perhaps 9 and 11, depending on funding, those grades would be able to take the PARC test. The high school determination of graduation for competency is still going to be determined by MCAS for the class of 2018. So what we're really focused on is 3 through 8, with the possibility of 9 and 11 depending on funding in terms of either PARC or MCAS. Because also please know that the science test will continue to be an MCAS test for all Massachusetts students. There is no PARC test for science. And then additionally, there is an alternative assessment that will be the alternative assessment that we use for a certain percentage of our special education population that are unable to take the PARC or the MCAS test. So at the bottom of this page, what I've provided is a table for what those MCAS tests are on any given year, just so that you know exactly what MCAS tests would be taken. And then my recommendation, I'm recommending that the Abington Public Schools administer the MCAS test for all tested grades for the 14-15 school year. And again, there's a table that provides you exactly what that'll be in Massachusetts. The rationale behind this, in my first paragraph, is that I believe that the PARC test is intended, I know it is intended to provide timely student achievement information to parents and teachers and schools through high-quality computer-based assessments. Abington, like many systems in Massachusetts, though, does not have the required technology to implement the computer-based version of the PARC test for the 14-15 school year. We're not alone in this. There are, I would throw a number out there, half, give or take, 10% either way, of systems are probably in the same situation that the Abington Public Schools is. It will continue to be a budget priority for the Abington Public Schools to improve the technology that we have that's available for teaching and learning and for test taking. But I want to highlight the teaching and learning part, because it's not that testing isn't important, but teaching and learning is the most important thing we do, and the testing informs that teaching and learning. And I'm going to get back to that technology piece later. So the alternative for districts to the computer-based administration of PARC, because we do not have the technology required to administer PARC using technology, is a paper and pencil-based PARC test. The time required to administer this test for ELA and math, not inclusive of pre-tests or practice tests, is estimated to be approximately 40 hours. Let me just spend a second on this number. So I've heard various estimations, 30, 35, 40 hours. So in terms of digging a little deeper, in talking to our building principals who just administered the pilot, the feeling was that it was certainly pushing toward the top end of that estimate. So this is an approximation, but suffice it to say 35, 40 hours of testing. This is about 20 hours more, 15 to 20 hours more than the current MCAS ELA and math test administration. And the increased time to implement this PARC test would be taken from student instructional time. So you send us your children for 180 days. After you take out lunch and you take out transitioning through hallways or recesses or other time when instruction is not taking place, we're limited with the amount of time that we have them. And so to subtract away a week, week and a half, 2 weeks, that has an impact on what's being taught, how much is covered, how deeply it's covered in classrooms. And that's the give to get this next generation of testing implemented for next year. So this seems to me to be diminishing the benefit of adjusting to this test format when it's in a time when it's changing. We've seen it change and be adjusted quite a bit over the last year. From even during the pilot there were adjustments, and again we want to move, if and when the Board of Education approves this for Massachusetts, to a computer-based model. We'll talk about that more in a moment. And so in terms of the investment of time, the priorities is teaching and learning. And so that sacrifice in teaching and learning does not seem to be in the best interest of students, only again to adjust again to a computer-based format when we make those adjustments. If the Board of Ed, and I anticipate they will, approve this in the fall of 2015. There's a piece too about a hold harmless arrangement, an accountability designation that DESE is offering. And so what they're saying is that if you administer this PARC test, they will hold your district harmless for their accountability ratings, meaning if your districts are graded level 1, 2, 3, or 5, Abington's currently a level 2 system. 1 is the best. You don't want to be a 5. And 2 is not the best place to be, but it's a good place to be. We run the risk of falling to a level 3. That still does not seem to me to be enough of a reason to sacrifice the time and instruction for our students, although I would certainly understand that some districts would find that tempting. In a survey of surrounding districts, I've been to 2 different meetings with 2 different groups of superintendents. In this area, people are split pretty much 50-50 with what districts are doing, whether they're administering the MCAS test or the PARCC test. Half of the people I've talked to of 20 are staying with the MCAS, and the other half are administering the PARCC test. And they're doing it for a variety of reasons. Many that are opting out of it for this coming year are doing it for the same reasons that I've described to you. Now, the Board of Education, it's anticipated, will approve the PARCC test for the following school year, and when and if they do that, you'll certainly hear from me that we should be administering this next generation of testing that's recommended by the colleges and the college presidents in Abington with great fidelity, and using it as a tool, again, to inform our instruction. So that's my recommendation for this evening. I'll speak a little bit more about the technology, or we can go there with people's questions or whatever people would like to do. Turn over to the committee.
Discussion, questions?
Well, I have a 3-part question, but I sort of spoke with Dr. Gonzalez right before the meeting. But how many states started with PARCC? How many are currently with PARCC? And what were the reasons for them to get away from PARCC? And would that cause states to have multiple testing standards? You know, PARCC might have 13 states, and these other states might have individual assessments. So now you're having all sorts of multiple type of assessments for each individual state.
Well, from the beginning, 46 states adopted the Common Core in one form or another as part of their standards and frameworks. And of those 46 states, about 26 went with PARCC as an assessment consortium, and the remainder went with Smarter Balanced. And it's not really just an East-West division, but of the 26 states that originally decided to be part of the PARCC consortium, and it's more than assessment, it also has model curriculum frameworks, it has some professional development modules, and so forth. 13 are left. And the major reason for states moving away from PARCC as an assessment, and I'm not sure how many moved away from Smarter Balanced, is the expense. And Massachusetts was actually looking at PARCC as a discount over the amount of money they're already spending on testing, because we have always involved human scorers of writing. We have always had a constructed response from the beginning in MCAS, and we don't use computer-based scoring. So our tests, just as MCAS, are already expensive. And some of the states that had only been using multiple choice and were able to run their tests solely through a Scantron didn't have the added expense of scoring hundreds of thousands of tests. So looking at that bottom line, a number of those states decided to leave the PARCC assessment system. Some are going to Smarter Balanced, and the company that makes the ACT is also coming to the table as a testing vendor. And our own testing vendor of MCAS, Measured Progress, is also looking to contribute items to all of the assessment systems. So it was 26, down to 13, and expense is the major reason most states have moved away from the PARCC assessments at this time. Sure.
Just as far as, so the decision, the recommendation before us is to put off PARCC for this next academic year.
Yes.
Is there, what's the thinking as far as the year after that? Where will we be?
The Board of Education is anticipated to make a decision in the fall, and then based on that decision, we would have clearer direction from the state in terms of what the state of Massachusetts is doing.
And do we know at this point how many out of 351 cities and towns in Massachusetts, how many have gone either way, either adopted Park or?
No. Some districts you could actually potentially wait till October to make a decision, because the facts on the ground aren't changing between now and October, meaning we won't get this influx of money to implement the technology. Don't anticipate that the testing windows will change significantly. I don't see that there'd be a benefit to waiting to October, but if you don't make a decision, the state will assign you the MCAS test for the following year.
And if we had the technology in place today, would we be talking about a different decision?
We might be, and because the benefit of taking this next generation of testing is, again, it's supported by the colleges, it's recommended by the colleges, it's a better analysis of our student learning, and therefore there is a benefit to getting our students acclimated to it. Just in terms of my recommendation, not while it's in flux and not at the expense of the time on learning that we're seeing.
The computer-based testing, I'm assuming, would be a lot shorter amount of time than pencil and paper.
Well, that would depend on a number of factors. It depends on whether the school has one-to-one devices for each student. So if a whole school could have every student on an acceptable device, the whole school, every grade from 3 through 11, could take the test at the same time. However, many schools aren't at one-to-one. They're one student, one device to 3 or 4 students. So they have a 4-week window where students would be cycling through that testing. So although the individual student might be done with math and English in both sessions in 9 hours, in reality it takes a lot of hours from the first time the first question is answered to the last student being finished. It would take that whole 4-week window, which would alter the delivery of instruction. It would have to take place in different ways. So it won't.
Students wouldn't have access to the technology, whether they had finished the test or not.
Could you clarify?
If they had finished the test, the technology would still be in use by other students, so classes would not have access to it.
That's right. Other classes in the building, while those students are cycling through the process, would not have access to the technology in the building because it would be devoted 100% to the testing situation. But if students were one-to-one, that would be different. As students finished, they could return to class, and every student who is finished would be able to use
I
technology.
should probably spend a moment on that, because in your packet, you've got the next logical question is, well, how much money is it going to take us to get to the point where we can do this work? And so there's a letter in there from Aaron Heyer, the Director of Technology. And so as Liz was describing this, we could administer Park on computers if we shut the district down and we bust students around Abington. This doesn't make sense. We'd shut the high school library down and we'd move elementary kids around the district, and that didn't even seem reasonable to even think about.
Well, I would just like to add that the first time students experience technology should not be on a high-stakes test. So even if we had the technology right now, students should have at least an instructional year, I would think, to be acclimated, especially our younger students who don't access technology in the classroom every day, and that's where a lot of concern is. So you would want to have, not only have the technology and have the students exposed, you would want to have the professional development to teachers to make that shift to using technology more effectively in instruction. So even though in an ideal world, if we were one-to-one right now, could we go? The question is, would our teachers and students be ready for it? And that's an additional expense beyond just getting the devices.
So what we were asked to do by Park to make sure that we were ready for this is they asked if you had a one-to-one ratio in every school building for the highest grade class size in that building across your entire district, how many one-to-one computers would you need? And so what we've done is we've based our estimates on that, and it's about 700 different handheld one-to-one units. Now, you could buy 700 units for $350, $400, if you did that math, you would have $250,000 or so in handheld units for our students to take the park test. The problem with that is just as Liz has described so well, that's not the purpose of buying those units. The purpose of buying those units is teaching and learning. We need to use them as teaching and learning tools and testing tools. And so the number you have from Aaron, which is $930,875, represents what it would take to provide the appropriate Wi-Fi, network, software, printers, electrical, and professional development to set these rooms up the right way so they could be used for teaching and learning and using the technology as an assessment tool.
Could we say down the road, people fall in love with Park and everybody jumps on the bandwagon. Could we actually get into a bind with the new school as far as the technology? How do we, we're a year behind getting the school online, and yet we have to put money out for technology. How could that work?
I appreciate the question. It's a very good question. There are three things that I think help us. The first one that I'm excited to tell Abington about is that if you agree to build a new school building, the technology comes with it. So you don't have these types of expenses, like many other expenses or problems that building a new school building would solve for Abington. The second thing to address that is that when that happens, or as that technology is purchased over the next 2 years until we get that new building, we'll certainly do it in a way that's the most economical, most efficient, and then have an ability to move it around the district to maximize its benefit. In other words, so if a new school building comes online, the current money we're spending on technology, in other words, I'm going to be asking the school committee to support a capital plan next year at the town meeting to help provide technology for these types of things. And so let's say, and hopefully the town supports it, that technology will be purchased with the hope in mind that we build a school building, so that when the school building is built, that technology can be moved around the district to benefit all of the students in the Abington Public Schools, not just the students that will be in the new building. The other piece is that the state is currently talking about providing and earmarking money and funding through the legislature to purchase that technology, again, because Abington is not alone in trying to solve this problem. There are many other cities and towns that are in the same situation that we're in with technology and having difficulty administering this. And again, this is the right and good thing to do for children who are learning in 2014, to have them learning on a computer. And so the state, there's been a lot of interest in earmarking money to cities and towns to help solve this problem.
So could this be a savings for building the school if the state, because the devices we're talking about, they're going to be multi-purpose, not just for the exam.
Right.
So, because potentially, sounds like if the academic year 2018 is when the new school will come online.
For the September of 2017,
Which would be,
if everything goes our way, at the fastest. So the
right,
17-18 school year.
Yeah, so the class of 2018 could be.
Winter of 2017.
Winter of 2.
Right.
With our current, yeah.
But so we're in 2014, 2015 next year. So if the state were to decide, hey, listen, you've got to adopt Park for the academic year 2017, you have to have these devices, and we're not going to get the school online until 2018, then they're going to provide money for technology. Would that potentially come off the cost of the new school?
There's no way to anticipate for sure, but I would not think that it would, because these are two totally separate funding sources, funnels of money for the state, and again, districts across the Commonwealth need this for this testing. And I should also say, though, that if the Commonwealth doesn't provide money for technology, the cities and towns aren't going to be able to just miraculously come up with the money, because, again, this is a common problem. There will need to continue to be this paper and pencil bridge to get people there, to accommodate people around the park testing if park is approved.
I would just like to say that the most important component of this next assessment system is not the technology, although it is important. The most important part about it is the standards and curriculum that have been adopted about what it takes to be successful in college and career in literacy and mathematics. And we already have the standards, and we're already moving our instruction in that way. So our students' success on the assessment is grounded in the instruction and curriculum that reflect the standards first. There are practices. We do have some technology, and kids can get accustomed to the kinds of items. For instance, kids have been word processing at the high school for a long time in testing situations now. I remember the first computer lab that went in at Abington High School, and the typewriters came out and the computers came in. So, and John, as a former student, knows that too. So I just want to know that to be able to do everybody at the same time with technology is certainly an asset in the efficiency of the system. There are certain kinds of items that are best shown on technology, but the skills and the standards, we're already working toward those. We've already worked to align our curriculum, and I think that's probably the most important shift we can make as a district for our kids, with the technology to follow that, if that makes sense.
And I do have to say, after looking at the samples of part questions that are out there, and of course I look at the ELA because I'm an ELA person. I'm not a math person, so I can't evaluate that. But looking at the test questions that are out there, one of the big complaints about the MCAS has been that we teach to the test. And what I notice is the questions in the park actually test to what I taught, rather than teaching to a specific question in the test. It shows a greater depth of knowledge than what you get from the types of questions that have been on in the MCAS. But giving up the amount of time on learning that we would have to do in order to institute that, that's a real problem. And that's a big problem with a lot of high stakes testing too, is the amount of time that goes into it.
Can I just sort of a general question as far as MCAS versus Park? When MCAS came in years ago, because there's a groundswell against Park right now, and even Common Core. Just I'm not familiar with it. What was the reaction to MCAS when that came in?
I wish I could tell you. I'm not old enough to remember.
John, what year did you graduate from?
1998.
Okay, so you were one of the first.
We took the practice MCAS.
So I think you would be familiar with the fact that even though I taught level 1 sophomores at that time, level 1 sophomores and their families were terrified, because up until that time, the only external tests that had been taken were SATs, and people were plenty terrified about SATs. But what they were terrified about was that they didn't know what was coming, because the MCAS tests really assess a student's ability to transfer the knowledge they learn in the classroom to a new task that they haven't been taught or prepared for. So it's really taking the training wheels off and seeing if you can ride that two-wheeler. And we had the luxury of 3 pilot years. And by the time our students and the curriculum had all caught up, our students were very comfortable. And by the time we had our first cohort go from kindergarten to grade 10, I believe that was the first year that 100% of our students passed MCAS, and most of them advanced and proficient. So the anxiety around the test decreased with the familiarity of the procedures, and to see that we could really use those results to inform and improve instruction. But in those first 3 years, there was a tremendous amount of anxiety. I think, as it is with anything that's new and anything that we perceive that we have a lack of control over.
But was the perception back then felt like that this was handled at the state and local level versus where this seems like it's a bigger, you've got other organizations involved in developing, whether it's Common Core and Park. I mean, so is that, you know, some of the things I get senses that people don't feel like we have necessarily at the state or local level buy-in on this. You know, we don't have a much of a say in it. Where with MCAS, you know, that was strictly at the state level.
What's so fortunate is that Massachusetts, having what is considered one of the founding measures of this kind of assessment, is one of the first states to develop statewide assessment of this nature and of this quality, and that our commissioners are sitting on the Board of Park and are sharing the word of our work in Massachusetts. When I go back and I look at the 1996 standards and the 2001 standards, 85% of them are here in the 2011 standards, because Massachusetts in English language arts really set the tone for so much of what's being developed here. So I'll be honest, I was new to Abington in 1996. I think MCAS happened to us. We didn't develop it in Massachusetts, in Abington. It happened at the state level, and there wasn't choice about it. There wasn't a lot of consultation other than the 3 pilot years. It just happened. Having met other people who were involved from other states in my role, I like to collaborate with other people, and I can learn from them and they from us. So it seems to be more of a benefit. I know that I belong to professional organizations like National Council of Teachers of English. There's a benefit to belonging to a national professional association, just like there is for the ASCD. So it can in many ways feel like a loss of control, but there's risk reward on both
Also,
sides.
MCAS wasn't out there all by itself either. All of the states at that point in time were developing their own standards and their own tests. MCAS came out at a different level than most of the other states, but the push from No Child Left Behind put that high stakes element into it, and that's a national push. So there was this national...
That was a few years in.
Yeah, but there is that national component to it also. The problem with it is a lot of our students are very transient. They go from one state to another. As an educator, I was always getting new students from one place or another. And if they're coming from a state that did not have the standards that were quite up to what we had, it's very difficult for that child coming in. So I think a lot of what's coming out of Common Core and Park, when and if it is accepted, might be leveling the playing field for some of those students who are not growing up in the same community and staying in the same school for, 12 years. And there are fewer and fewer that are doing that.
My father was in the service when I was going through elementary school. I went to 6 schools by 6th grade, and I'm fond of telling Meg that I was introduced to fractions in grade 3, in grade 4, in grade 5, in grade 6 at 4 different schools, which is why I majored in English.
So concerning the expenses with Park, we talked about computers, and they're not going to be specific to the Park test. In other words, they don't get put in the closet and taken out for 2 weeks when we do the Park testing.
Right. That doesn't, we want to purchase computers with a more of a global vision, because they're for teaching and learning, and then we will use them to assess our students.
What's kind of exciting about that is there's an attempt by every testing system, every company, to make their test what they call device agnostic, so that no matter what device you have and you use with students every day, the test should be able to run on it. And at the beginning, iPads were going to be excluded because you couldn't lock them down securely, and Apple changed so that iPads could be used. And that's by all testing assists, because people want that business. So the idea is to keep that competition going among companies. Testing companies are working to make sure that they're the devices that you use with kids for teaching and learning first, and testing is just another thing that you can do on them.
First, we'd like to thank you for tonight. At this point, we'd be looking for a motion to direct the superintendent of schools to designate the MCAS test as the state-provided student assessment tool for all tested grades for the 2014-2015 school year.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Can I just ask that going forward that, and Peter, you do a good job keeping us informed, but make sure that we have a agenda item on Park and, you know, Common Core, where things are, and even if it's just say, I've got nothing else to report this month, that we keep it out in front of us going forward.
I don't understand. How do you want, what do you mean? You mean to have something?
I'd like to have it to be
Have something carried on the
considered
agenda?
as an agenda item every single meeting, every time we come in. Because it hasn't been really until these last two meetings that we've kind of got up to, we've really gotten into, the heart of Park and started looking at Common Core, that we keep it out in front of us because, we don't know where the state's going to go, and that, it seems like something, even if it's on a daily basis, is going on with this, and that we, as a committee, make sure we keep it out in front of us, and whether you have something to report or someone here has something to discuss, we keep it on the agenda so it can be discussed.
So the request is to keep Park on this agenda or other agenda items? Just keep this one carried over so that if there's something to report, it's reported, and if there's nothing, there's nothing?
Yeah, well, if it's more of just a discussion point, so we keep it out in front of us,
Yep.
that we know. That there's always an agenda item that discusses Park and/or Common Core.
If that's what the committee would like to do? sure.
I'd just like to be considered.
Well, leaving it on maybe just as an update on,
Yeah, could be, right,
Status update.
right,
Status, like the
Yeah.
football.
yeah,
If we get an
So-
update on the new school.
right, yeah, I'm not looking for anything formal, just, yeah.
I didn't know if you wanted that or there were other items too.
Oh, no, that was all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we're going to get back on our agenda here, and at this point, it's the report of the subcommittee. And we have an update on our protocol subcommittee, which is Kathy Bailey and Paul Haggerty.
I'm passing along a letter from Peter. Paul and I met yesterday and kind of took our first steps into a discussion of what we wanted to look at for protocols concerning how the school committee functions. There are a lot of things that we need to look into, a lot of proposals that we're going to probably be bringing forward. It's not something that's going to be done in a month or a week or any of those things. However, we felt that there was one particular protocol that we wanted to bring forward to have the committee look at right away. Emails have become an issue. In the past, they weren't, so we have had no protocol set for how to deal with emails, communications that we get from the community. It's nice to finally have people interested and involved, but we need to have a set way of actually looking at it. And we felt even though it was going to be quite some time before we have a full list of protocols and policies to bring before the committee, this was one that we really needed to bring ahead. So if you look at what's in italics, what we came up with is that within 48 hours of the receipt of a communication, this is not limited to emails, within 48 hours of the receipt of a communication from an Abington Public School stakeholder or an Abington resident, that communication will be acknowledged and the message will be forwarded to the superintendent of schools and the chairperson of the Abington School Committee. So we'd like to have you consider that as a protocol to bring forward that we could vote on tonight. It will probably, as we work on the rest of the document on the operation of the school committee, it may be rolled into that document, but I think this is something that we need to have in place right away and can't really wait until the rest of it's all done.
And the timing on this is consistent with the teacher handbook also, as far as, that's why we have that section down below. Not to exceed 48 hours when school is in session.
So not to jump right here, so at the beginning of each school year, each teacher is going to communicate?
That's already in place.
That's already in place,
Right,
yes.
so that hasn't changed.
Oh, no, no, we're not, we just put that there as a
Right.
reference.
Oh, right.
It's to show that what
Yeah.
we're looking for is going to be in keeping with what
Right.
is in effect for teachers right now.
Right.
I think what this does is just put Peter and Ellen on the hot seat for, you have 48 hours to get back to somebody. I mean, bottom
See, I read
line.
that different, isn't that funny? I read that differently.
I think I'm reading a little different.
I read it as if Mike got an email, within 48 hours, he's going to send a message back to that person that says, I'm forwarding your message to the chairperson and to the superintendent of schools.
That's the way I read it also.
And I think it could be handled that way. But we also need to make, actually, the school committee chairperson is the conduit for information back and forth, so that everything is consistent.
Oh, I agree.
And I think within 48 hours, acknowledging the fact that I've taken that step to get your question or your problem to the people who will handle it is important.
So I guess if I'm reading it the same way Felicia's reading it, it could take 96 hours to get back to the person who initially initiated that email or that phone call or whatever.
No, it's within,
I don't-
Well, if I get
Where
it,
is your 90?
if the way I read this is if I get that email solely, I have 48 hours to respond to Peter and Ellen with that email. And then they have another 48 hours to respond back to the original recipient. Is that the way you're reading it, or am I just putting too much into it?
Yeah, I didn't read the
By
second
the
48.
wording that the communication will be acknowledged,
Okay.
should be acknowledged to the person who is communicating.
By whom? That's where I think Mike and I are.
Yeah.
The intent here was that the superintendent of schools or the chairperson would respond. Personally, as the person receiving the communication, I would want to respond and say, I've passed it on to these people.
If I give I'm going to be a bold risk taker and throw some language out there and tell me if you guys think that this helps clarify the intention, or if you're not comfortable with any of this. Upon receipt of a communication from an Abington Public School stakeholder or Abington resident, that communication will be forwarded to the superintendent of schools and the chairperson of the Abington School Committee and followed up on within 48 hours.
Okay, then we need to move the within 48 hours, because we don't want to say it in the beginning and in the end.
Yeah, I didn't say it when I removed it when I
okay.
said it.
Right.
So it would be
Could
just upon...
you say it over again, Peter?
Yep. Upon receipt of a communication from an Abington Public School stakeholder or an Abington resident, that communication will be forwarded to the superintendent of schools and the chairperson of the Abington School Committee and followed up on within 48 hours.
So I think that last might be intent. I get it might need to have a little different language, but the only other question that I have in terms, sorry, I know this isn't my policy, but
Well, it's not a policy.
procedure,
It's-
protocol.
yeah.
One of the things that, I mean, would you want to add the language like there is in the faculty handbook, something like normally not to exceed 48 hours? If you're out of town, you don't get the email, sits in your mailbox for a week. you come back, but if you were, say, normally not to exceed, then there are those instances when you may not be in receipt of that email. Just-
I think those things could come up, and to have to be at hour 48, we haven't.
The expectation is 48, but the,
Right. If they're both on vacation somewhere different, then, they may not have access to the emails right away. They try to respond within 48 hours.
Well, one of the things that we did talk about is if that does happen where someone is, Ellen or Mike are on vacation, then,
There's a
we,
designated.
say, Kathy is the secretary, would be designated. So there's always somebody basically on call to deal with school committee business.
I guess I'm thinking more about as members, if you got a email from a community member.
Right.
You may not get it forwarded to either of those people within 48 hours.
Which actually could happen if you have problems with computers, as I've had recently.
Right.
Not the intent, but
Every once in a while, I get an email that goes to the junk mail.
I think the difference here is that this is a protocol. It's like, here's our intention. It's not a mandate that within, like special ed, within 3 to 5 days, or within 45 days, and you're obligated, or else you're out of compliance. I think that with this,
right, as is the one below,
It's an
protocol.
intent.
Yeah,
Right.
protocol for the Abington Public Schools
right,
faculty.
and just like I'm sure we've had teachers that have exceeded,
Yeah.
but not intentionally, but it was, for one reason or another. So it's within reasonable.
We're making an effort to
Reasonable.
define a process so that people will know that they're being attended to.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and I think for us, it's trying to throw Ellen and Peter under the bus, is that if something comes in, they're to deal with it, not somebody else on the committee. That there's, for the school committee, that Ellen's gonna address it and get the message out there, and then inform us that it's been handled.
So maybe if we added, like, what's in the teachers down below, the normally not to exceed.
Want me to give it one more read with that language in there?
Sure.
Upon receipt of a communication from an Abington Public School stakeholder or an Abington resident, that communication will be forwarded to the superintendent of schools and the chairperson of the Abington School Committee and followed up on within a time period not normally to exceed 48 hours. And again, highlighting, part of the discussion too was highlighting that they're looking for Abington stakeholders or Abington community members, Abington taxpayers. You may get, correspondence from a vendor from Colorado. We're not worried about that. So.
I'm okay with that.
I'm fine with that.
That's a good one.
That's good.
Designate.
Can I make a motion that we adopt this protocol with the language changes that Peter just read?
Second that.
So we'll be looking for a motion to accept this protocol as amended and presented. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Can't be any job. I guess I should add that then in the case that if I am away or unavailable with this, then I'll designate
Notify.
Then,
via email or.
then it's
however
Mike's
close-
responsibility?
or secretary.
She'll pass the buck.
So that's, anything else on the subcommittee?
That's where we're at this
Yep.
point. We have another meeting scheduled, and
Yes.
we'll be working on numerous other things. Paul's collected a lot of information from other school committees in the state, and I've looked at information from the MASC. So we're putting all that together and trying to find something that fits for our community.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, we're going to have our principal reports, and from Crowell Middle School, we have Roseanne Oscar.
Good evening. I would like to begin with a review of the 2013-2014 school improvement plan and let you know the status on several items, where we're at. So we can go past the initial pages to Goal 1, Objective 1, which should be on page 6. And Goal 1 is to improve student performance through enhancements to curriculum instruction and assessment. And there are several action steps. There are 4 action steps on this particular objective, which is provide an optimal middle-level program with rigorous and relevant curriculum and instruction. The first, and what I will do is highlight a few key points, and then if you have questions on any other points, just let me know, instead of going, through each and every item, and I will give you some data that I've collected on these goals as well. But one of the highlights is step 1, middle-level teaming, that we are teaming now. And the teaming has increased collegiality, community building, both with the teachers and with the students. So this has been a very, very positive move. We've had a lot of wonderful communication about students and have been able to react and help students in a more timely manner. When you realize that sometimes things are going on with more than one teacher for a particular child, and we're able to address those needs immediately. So teaming has been a very positive change. In addition to that, we were fortunate enough to hire an additional Spanish teacher last August, and we implemented the program. But we had already had a schedule set when the teacher was hired, so we implemented the program in a way that was not optimal at the time. We had a 3-day class and a 3-day class instead of a 6-day across-the-board class for Spanish. So we had a Spanish language class for 3 days and a Spanish conversation and culture class for 3 days. And so we did implement that, which was an achievement under this action step. And just so that you know that in the school improvement plan for 14-15, now that we're able to create the proper schedule, now it will be a 6-day across-the-board class. So 1 step, and then now we're making the final step to implement. So we will have 2 across-the-board 6-day classes, both for 7th and 8th grade in Spanish language. I'd like to go down to the additional related accomplishments. For items that didn't tie directly into an action step, I just placed some additional accomplishments for our school underneath each goal. And I would like to highlight the fact that we've implemented this year an after-school homework club 2 times a week, and then we also had the High School National Honor Society after-school tutoring program 2 times a week. So we were fortunate because not only did we have all of the teachers after school to help kids, but we also had help 4 days a week with the homework club and with the tutors coming down from the high school. So that just supplemented the help the kids were getting after school. And we did have consistent attendance at the homework club and with the high school tutors. So that was a good thing.
What sort of like numbers were you talking as far as participation?
We had, I would say for the homework club, it really varied because kids would come in and out of it. I would say about maybe 10 kids, and then sometimes, some days 5 kids,
okay.
but kids that really needed it.
Okay.
It was good. Yeah, and then honestly, some kids that didn't, they're just wonderful students, and they just wanted that extra boost.
Oh, okay.
So it was definitely a combination. And of course, kids would come in and out and go see teachers, then come and use the homework club or the tutors. And overall for this goal, I would like to share that for this year, for core subjects, for 7th grade, we've seen a 12% decrease in failures. We saw in 8th grade a 16% decrease in failures, and this is from trimester 1, from the beginning of the year to the progress report for trimester 3, because today was our last day of school. We don't have those finals yet. A grade of 70 or below, for the 7th grade, we've seen a 36% decrease. And for 8th grade, we saw a 12% decrease. So student performance has in fact improved. In addition to that, and we also have an objective 2 to this goal, which is on the next page. I am happy to report that our end of the year referrals to summer school due to multiple failures has been reduced from end of year last year to end of the year this year by 400%. Yeah, we're happy. Significant difference. So next, any questions on the first page?
I just have a quick question. So
Yes.
the academic standards, when you're comparing these students from one year to the next, they're the same? In other words, the academic standards hadn't been lowered. You know what I'm trying to...
The students
In other
are
words-
50, well, actually, I mean, I'm comparing the 7th grade to the 7th grade. So no, I'm not saying that, you know, as 7th graders last year, this is what they got. And in 8th grade this year, this is what they got. I did not do that.
But
I
your
compared-
academic standards haven't been lowered
No.
from one
No.
year to the next?
No.
You are comparing different classes.
I'm comparing different classes.
Yeah. And then the check, of course, is the state assessment, the MCAS test or the PARC test, and there are other tests that go on
Right.
just to, so it's
Right.
not, this is just one indicator. It's a good indicator, it's good news, I'm not trying to say it's not, but it's one indicator in the life of the school.
Yes.
As we were discussing this testing earlier, we also do SATs, ACTs, there's so much, there's a number of testing.
There are several criteria. But what is encouraging is that I'm seeing it in both grades. So it's school-wide. So objective 2 is to develop and implement common formative and summative assessments in all subject areas and analyze the results of these assessments using the data to drive modifications to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. And we have spent a great deal of time on this overall. This year, every department created district-determined measures, and they were either selected as tools that existed or they were created. And that was a lot of work for the departments. It was very good work. They've implemented quite a few of those assessments, formative and summative, and I've indicated that we've come up with a great deal, we've come up with quite a few other common assessments as well, formative and summative, that are not just DDM. So this has been a positive year for tracking student data along the way and making adjustments to practice based upon that data. Our teachers in their team meetings, being teamed, they have team meetings on a regular basis. They analyze the data, they discuss the data, we discuss changes for the kids, interventions or additional supports that we can implement and ways to push kids even further when they're at a positive level. Any questions on that page? All right. Objective 2 is to implement the Mass Educator Evaluation Framework. Further, faculty will conduct self-assessments, develop meaningful, actionable, and measurable professional practice and student learning goals, outline action steps, and work toward the achievement of each goal. And we have, in fact, completed the process each step of the way, action steps 1 through 6. We will continue the process of step 6. We had data teams, which are both a combination of our middle school interdisciplinary teams, which we have 3, but in addition to that, department teams also meet and they also analyze the data, and we'll continue that, of course, into the next year when the teachers come back and start the process all over again and do their next self-assessment. Mm-hmm. Any questions on this page?
Can I just ask, as far as action step number 2, each faculty member developed one professional practice goal and one student learning goal. I've learned, being on the school committee, it's like there's goals here, but then you have all these objectives underneath. Are there any objectives underneath, or is this strictly, this is what my goal is and I need to work towards it? Are there layers below the goal?
They have a goal, and then they created an action plan that has steps very similar to what this represents, but they
Okay.
don't have different objectives.
Okay,
They
so-
have one student learning goal and one professional practice goal. And generally, they're related because they are all, there's a through line to the district strategic plan, our school improvement plan, and the goals that our teachers selected. So it's a very straight through line. So they're all connected, so we know that people were all working toward the same goal, school goals and district goals.
And if it helps too, there's also the rubric that provides 23 different indicators of success for teaching and learning that
guess the
you're,
indicators, yeah.
that you
Yeah,
also
that makes it
evaluate.
even clearer.
Makes it
Anyone
harder.
That's why I had rubric.
Yeah.
I think I know that rubric now, though, boy. All right, so next page is, now this is the second part. This is objective 2 to goal 2, implementing the plan. Furlio faculty will receive either data team coaching or in-service data team training on the collaborative inquiry process and will utilize the collaborative inquiry process to collect, observe, and analyze a variety of student academic and behavioral data. And we have done some of that. We had intended in action step 1 to send some of our faculty to the data team coaching training at North River Collaborative. Unfortunately, it interfered with our MCAS schedule, and it just didn't make sense to have teachers leave to attend a training when they've been working with these students all year, and they really were the ones to administer the test to those students. So we will we'll relook at that again next year. But we have done work in our team meetings on the data team process, and you know, and we are actually going to make that a focus for next year. So the number 2, the data teams will analyze, this is the action step, data teams will analyze student learning data. We've had several situations where the teachers have done that. The student learning goals and the professional practice goals have been the focal points for this, and the data and evidence that the teachers provided so that we could analyze their progress toward their goals at the end of this year for either their summative or their formative reports for the evaluation process, gave us clear data as to how they progressed toward each of those goals. And we looked at each one for each faculty member.
They just asked, that action step 1, as far as faculty will be trained. And then the indicators of accomplishment, I'm just a little confused as far as faculty trained in data team coaching principle and first faculty trained during 2012, 2013.
We had a group of 6 people that were trained, 12 to 13. There were 6 faculty members. Now, those faculty members attend team meetings, and that is who, like we are. I'm one of them. Mr. Atkinson is one of them. We go into team meetings, and we guide people through the process.
Okay, and then it says second team trained during 2013, which is this year.
And that's what we were hoping to do, but it conflicted with the MCAS schedule, and we could not send them to training, so we had to skip this year. And we're working through our teams within service versus sending them to North River. We have 6 people that went to North River already,
Okay.
but the North River training is extensive. It's very good. It's very effective.
Okay, so when you talk about second team trained during, that was just in-house training and not the North River Collaborative?
No, that was the indicator of accomplishment. That was what originally I had hoped to do, was send another group of people to North River. But we couldn't, it turned out we could not do that this year, so we're postponing it until next year.
You look at the status column.
Yeah, the status
Yeah, no, I
column
see
was-
that, I'm just trying to read this, and it's just confusing.
Well, that was
to
my
me.
indicator of accomplishment, so if I achieved it, they would have went this year. It just didn't make sense to send them when the dates were changed for the training. They
Okay.
were originally fine.
So they have to, if I may step in, only
Go
because
ahead.
all this is funded through grants. So I say to all the principals, okay, we have a certain amount of money that is going to be focused on data teams. And you have so many people from each building that will be going to the training. So then they plan out 1 year, 2 year, 3 years. And so in this particular case, is that Furlio had planned, okay, here's the first group, here's the second round of staff, et cetera. But in this particular case, due to it needing to be, because of the snow, because of situations that came up, they needed to rework the times. It ended up conflicting with MCAS. So now she's pushing it out to next year versus the people not being trained this year, et cetera.
I think it was 6 or 7 people would go for a bit, and you're talking 4 or 5 full school days away from the kids. 6 school days away from the kids. So
And
that's
it's
a
very
lot. It's a
expensive,
huge
so they become
sacrifice.
part of the
So you
day
don't, so you,
team.
even though this is
Yeah.
important, you don't want to send a whole building all at once or do too many people. You want to sort of step through it.
We were intending to send 3 this year.
Okay.
We made a big push the previous year.
Right.
Yeah. Next page, page 10, is goal number 3, to maintain and initiate programs which foster a safe school environment that is substance-free, tolerant, respectful, and conducive to education. Objective 1, to provide educational programming that will educate students in the areas of tolerance, substance abuse, respect for others, self-respect, and personal safety. Action step number 1, we have been investigating an advisory program, but and originally, the indicator of accomplishment indicates that we would have made a recommendation to you for implementation in the 14-15 year, but we've extended that. We've asked to postpone it. I did that earlier in the year because we feel that we need to continue our research on curriculum, and this year, we were not able to visit existing programs, and I feel that we need to do that before we make any decisions. So I'd like to form a team next year, and we'll do more thorough research and move forward in the process, but before making a decision, I'd rather everyone be well informed. The number 2 is probably one of our biggest. We implemented the basic school-wide positive behavioral intervention and supports program, and it's generally called a PBIS. And with that implementation came greater consistency with the way that we responded to disruptive behaviors, and also how we integrated positive interventions versus all punitive, and we have seen amazing results. I wanted to share with you that we have seen office referrals for, which are when a student disrupts an environment within the school. They're referred to the office. We saw a 53% decrease from the end of last year to our data at the end of this year. With regard to whether they're in school or out of school suspensions, we have experienced a 59% decrease from the end of last year to the end of this year. So good results again. We also implemented a school-wide book read this year, and it was focused on anti-bullying topic, and we'd like to do that again next year as well. So this is something that was a success this year. We had this, students in the school read the book, and then the author came and spoke to the kids at the end of the school year. Thank you to the Abington Education Association. Education Foundation, and also the Abington Rotary Club.
I was thinking of you.
This whole project was funded with grants from both organizations, so thank you. And at the end of this goal, I'd just quickly like to share with you some other positives. We had 7 assemblies with a focus on school safety or school environment safety, internet safety. We also anti-bullying efforts, and we also had a great deal of community service. And if I may just run through this list, our students participated in Abington Cleanup Day, Breast Cancer Awareness Week, where they raised over $300. They participated at water stations at the Jeff Coombs race in the fall. Students participated in creating packages of treats for troops, senior holiday cards. We had our students raise over 1,700 pounds for the Abington Food Pantry in collaboration with Trookies. Community service, we hosted the Veterans Day Assembly, the Memorial Day Ceremony. We had several students participate in a diabetes fundraiser at Showcase Cinema, and they raised over $20,000 in collaboration with the cinema. We participated in Pennies for Patients as school-wide, and in addition to that, on a Saturday morning, we had a large group of students. I think it was about 50. Yeah, about 50 students. South Shore Hospital's hospice walk, and they raised over $1,500.
I just had a question.
Yes.
The AEF, when they did the Chris Herron, who spoke at the high school.
Yes.
Did the 8th graders go up and
They
attend
did, they
that?
walked up,
They walked up.
yes.
Can I just ask on number 4 there, DA Internet Safety Program Sponsor? It says not completed, will included, and not to jump ahead, but is that included in the school improvement plan for next current year? Because I didn't see that.
Yeah, I didn't put that in because that was an option. We actually got to the point where we were having so many assemblies and students were coming out of class that we decided to cut it off. Honestly, that's what we decided to do because we needed to weigh the amount of time in class versus, and we have a plan for next year, as a matter of fact, as to how to handle that as a school. We've been discussing it, and so
Right.
we've
So
decided to.
that's not being carried over?
We're not carrying that over, and it doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. It's just not one of our main focuses
Or
this next
do
year.
you mean it won't happen this way, it's happening another way? In other words,
It's
internet
happening
safety
in
is happening a
several other
different way.
ways. We had an internet, see, the thing is, we did have an internet safety with Mark from Bridgewater.
Mark is the Massachusetts Aggression Reduction Center,
Yes.
not some guy named Mark.
No, I'm just trying to, it says on the stats, not completed, will include in the, so it's not included in the,
So you might want to remove that language.
I can remove
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's all
I
I'm-
can remove that, yeah. I can remove that, thank you. So goal 4, to utilize a variety of modes of communication to increase the level of parent-guardian involvement. The objective for this is to reach 100% of Furlio parents, guardians through written and online communication of school events and individual student data. The first thing we did that worked out very well was the parent-teacher conferences. We had sign-ups online, and that significantly reduced the wait time for parents in the hallways. That was a very welcome thing. However, that is in the new improvement plan because I would like to look for another program to do it with because I think we could improve upon even the online choice we made, but that's more of a tweak. We increased the number and use of teacher web pages. We did in fact make some progress on that, and we'd like to continue with that.
How many teachers are on web pages now, percentage-wise, in the school?
95%. Just some programs, it's not as well suited for. We created team cards this year with contact information, and we enclosed them in the letter that goes to parents about the parent portal, and we gave it out at open house, and then for those that were not able to attend open house, we sent it home. So everyone had at least a team card with contact information. We added our parent email addresses to X2 for the first time this year, and that has been a major help for teachers because they can click on it and they automatically send an email to the parents. Parent communication has increased significantly this year, and that data is clear on the evidence boards as part of the teacher evaluation process. Increase in student-parent events. We had our first Furlio open mic night with about 100 people, and we just had an awesome talent show today, and I know that we'll have some good open mics next year. And we've publicized much more consistently with Constant Contact, and I also created a Facebook page for Furlio that is being utilized today. There were 178 likes on the page, so we're building it. It's building every day. Kids and adults, by the way, which is nice. There attached are the math, science, and English language arts action plans based upon the results of MCAS. I was not intending to go through all of them, but the data is there. If you have any questions, just don't hesitate to ask. So that's 2013, 14. And our new school improvement plan. We go to goal 1, objective. There's only one objective drafted for this. So goal 1 is to improve student performance through enhancements to curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Objective is to provide an optimal middle-level program with rigorous and relevant curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Action step number 1, we have done a great deal of work with department heads and departments to align to the Common Core standards so that instruction is aligned, but we are still in the process of acquiring the resources that would benefit us and the students greatly. So we're working towards that this year. Number 2 is the Spanish class that I mentioned, implementing the 6-day across-the-board class. And number 3, integrating technology into the curriculum instruction and assessment that supports MS technology literacy standards. We would like to continue to build on the technology that exists in our school. Number 4, we would like to implement instructional and assessment practice that promote student-centered classroom environments. And this is for a focus on student motivation, student engagement, which we know are key factors for improving student performance at the middle level. Number 5, investigate diagnostic assessments for English language arts and mathematics, which will identify areas of both student need and enrichment. And that is something that we would like to implement in addition to, as an addition to our common formative assessments that exist today. Number 6, we restructured the wellness program, and we're working on that. We have not completed the schedule, but we're in a good place with the schedule that we're building for the next year. And we had an uneven mix of PE and health. We had only 3 days of PE and 3 days of health in 8th grade, and 6 days of both in 7th grade. We have balanced them out. So now we have 6 days of PE in both grades and 3 days of health in both grades. So that's what this line item represents. We've restructured the music program to offer band, chorus, and music class. Prior to this, we have been offering, for the past 3 years since I've been here, band and chorus only, and we would like to integrate a music class to add another option for students.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is this going to be a general music class? Are you developing, is there curriculum being developed for it?
There is a curriculum. It's more about music theory. It's a music class. Yes. And, yes. And we may do some flexible grouping with chorus class, taking groups into the music class to have a small group learn a particular, item. So for example, when chorus is 3 days a week, we may have one of those days, one group goes out. We might have like an ABC class in a chorus class. One group goes in and works in the small group. Then the next day, the next group goes in and works in the small group. So we'd like to do some flexible grouping, which we haven't done. Yeah.
Can I just ask, number 4, when you say implement instructional and assessment practices that promote student-centered classroom environments where students are participating productively in their own learning, what were we doing before?
We're trying to increase the student engagement. I mean, we're doing a variety of this, but what we'd like to do is share as a faculty more strategies for increasing student engagement. So for example, you have an interactive whiteboard at the front of the room, and the teacher is working on the whiteboard, instructing, and then maybe one student comes up, and there are activities and ways to get all of the students seated, engaged.
Okay.
Maybe we bring in, the iPads into that room and integrate, more technology at the same time that we're improving the engagement. So it's different strategies, and what we plan to do is actually share those strategies and discuss them and treat them like look-fors when we're going through classrooms.
But is this the way the faculty and administration interacts here? That's always been going on, though, right?
It is always going on. But we've spent a lot of our in-service time and a lot of our professional development time focused on implementing the Mass Teacher Evaluation process. And so this year, we'd like to select an area to focus on, and this would be one of them. Of course, we're focusing on many, but this would be one focus area that we feel is important to share ideas and strategies of how to engage and motivate adolescents.
Okay.
And a big focus of the new evaluation tool is less focused on teacher, but also focused on student. So that you're looking at basically how the teacher is teaching through the lens of the students. So there's more of a focus on that whole engagement piece. So that when we walk in a classroom, it's not just, you or me teaching. It's about, okay, what are you doing to engage those students in the learning process? And so that's a little bit of a shift, because in some cases we still have people that, do the delivery of instruction. And now it's, okay, we're shifting that, yes, as a part of that, but then, we're analyzing the engagement of the students within your class or within your department. So that's why there's a little bit of a shift with that, because we're seeing that we still have to work with people in that area.
That's why we don't see the rows and,
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Correct. And the technology helps with that,
Right.
because there are different ways to be able to show, how students are engaged in learning.
yeah.
Thanks, Phil.
So, I'm sorry, when an evaluator comes in the room, they're watching to see the student engagement. It's not just what the teacher's doing, you're watching to see what the kids are doing as a result of the teacher.
Any other questions on this page? Goal 2, objective. Goal 2 is to use student performance data to make informed decisions about curriculum instruction and assessment. And the objective for this goal is to implement instructional practices and programs based on student performance data to improve student achievement. And this ties into the whole data team process, and the fact that we're at the point now to really start analyzing, not that we haven't done that also, but to do it in a more strategic manner, to analyze student data. So we're going to continue our goal of adding common assessments, and our focus would be more on formative assessments, which are assessments that are taken during the learning process to assess how students are comprehending, how much students are comprehending the material, and then we can adjust practice based upon that. Number 2 is to identify students who are struggling to make effective progress based on subject grades, MCAS scores, and attendance, and provide remediation and other resources to promote higher achievements. We would like to create skills labs based upon a set of criteria. We have primarily been going off of the MCAS scores and kicking off skills groups in September with our tutors. But we'd like to blend the data and use additional data, because that is what we tended to end up doing anyway. And so we'd like to make that a more formal process this year, of having criteria set for students that would take part in skills labs to get that additional remediation. And number 3, support instructional teams charged with acting as a data team and collecting, analyzing, and reporting student performance data. The data teams will make adjustments to practice based on results of analyses. And each team, interdisciplinary team and department team, will be a data team. So both the interdisciplinary teams and the department teams. So we have quite a network of teaming that is going on, and that creates a nice communication infrastructure, both vertically and horizontally. So that we also have our student support team, which we call the SST, which is principal, assistant principal. We have a school psychologist, guidance counselor, the nurse, and we all are part of this network so that we all communicate, and we can provide data to the teams, and we can analyze the data that they have academically and behaviorally in classrooms, put it all together and make decisions on how to give supports, who needs supports, interventions in a more timely manner.
So is this data, is this on an individual student basis, or is it collectively?
Both.
Oh, both. Okay, both.
Yeah, both. Goal 3. Goal 3 is to maintain and initiate programs which foster a safe school environment that is substance-free, tolerant, respectful, and conducive to education. And the objective is to provide educational programming that will educate students in the areas of tolerance, substance abuse, respect for others, self-respect, and personal safety. So here, number 1 is to investigate advisory program curricula and also to visit programs, so that we can make a decision. We can make a decision as to what we would like to present to school committee as a startup advisory program in the following school year. And number 2 is to expand the school-wide positive behavioral intervention and support program. And we focused a great deal on the behavior component of the PBIS this year. And now, as a school, we'd like to focus on the student responsibility component. So that would be academic compliance, but it would also be student responsibility, doing your homework, bringing materials. We would like to, agree upon a rubric that we would use for something like that. Okay. Number 3, to implement character education program. We've done a student survey and a teacher survey, and the results indicated that we needed a bit of a change up on our character education program, and we did implement the school-wide read this year, which was part of it. But next year we will be focusing on Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens programs in our character education program, which is covered once a month on our half days. The teams decided to do it in a team-based manner this year, which was actually wonderful. It really proved to be really effective. They came up with some pretty cool, cooperative grouping activities, and starting out as a big group and then splitting up. But they'll take the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens this year and do that on half days. Number 4 is to support the Abington School Building Committee's efforts to secure state-of-the-art facilities for Abington's middle school students. Number 5 is to research the implementation process for fee-based middle school interscholastic sports program beginning in August 2015 with one sport, cross-country. Any questions?
On that, what potentially could the cost be to the
Well,
student?
that's the low-budget sport.
Right.
So it would be very low, actually, because we don't, we don't need to purchase anything other than a coach and perhaps an assistant coach, depending on how many kids sign up.
Sorry, question. Would you be looking, if you look to travel to other places, you'd
We'd
have
have,
to...
yeah, some fees, right,
We'd have a van, gas.
yes.
It
I had
did-
experience with this in a previous district of implementing an interscholastic sports program, so already we're starting our research, and we felt the need to put this in here because we feel like that's the next step in our after-school, enrichment program.
Well, don't you have something now for cross-country?
No.
I thought there was something as far as Zumba or
Oh,
drama,
well, we have intramurals.
intramurals.
We have
This is
intramurals,
going
which
above
are-
that?
Oh, wait, yes, this is going above it. This is interscholastic, which means they would compete with other teams from
competitive.
other schools. The intramurals, literally, they stay in our school, and it's within walls, within the school walls.
We don't have a Zumba team.
And we have a Zumba. Yes, we do, yeah, we do some after-school activities, which we always try to build on.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
But that's different. We have a running club.
Right, that's
but
okay.
Different. That's just our, our Furlio kids, training and running with an advisor, but they're not competing.
Okay, but we don't know what an estimate for as far as the cost would be?
We don't have that yet. I'm putting it in here so that we get the go-ahead and just research it. We'd like to do some research and get some data.
Okay,
That would probably be fairly close to the high school cross-country cost.
Depending on how many meets you drive to.
It's less. I believe it's less, though. Yeah. It's
well,
not as many
If you have
meets.
the gas in the van.
right, but everybody pays the same fee,
Right.
whether you're cross-country,
Or football.
football,
I
or
was just going to
baseball.
say, I think we'll
Yeah.
have to do some investigating around this because we don't have, our fee structure is not a different fee depending on the cost of the sport.
Right.
It's a fee for sports. So we'd be investigating the cost of a middle school interscholastic program
Rather than a high school.
rather than a high school
Right.
program.
That-
So there would be parity in terms of the cost, whether it's cross-country or football or basketball, as it is at the high school level, but I think we'd be looking at what the we'd be looking at specifically what is the cost of a middle school program, less meet or games, the cost of officials, and those kinds of things.
Rolo used to have a basketball team that traveled to other middle schools.
Yeah.
And other schools have volleyball teams.
It was outstanding. You know, it was,
It'll be a shorter schedule, a shorter season, those kinds of things.
Next page, number 4, goal number 4. Goal number 4 is to utilize a variety of modes of communication to, this is, no, I didn't already do. I'm getting confused because I already did the other plan. To utilize a variety of modes of communication and to increase the level of parent-guardian involvement. And the objective is to reach, again, 100% of Frollio parent guardians through written and online communication of school events and individual student data. We added the individual student data. We need to, action step number 1, we need to include parent emails on X2, which is, we need to update that on our database at the beginning of the school year. And we're hoping to do that in even a more thorough manner than we did last year. So bringing that, we started it last year, but we'd like to get more emails on this year. Number 2 is to investigate and implement a new online registration process for parent-teacher conferences. There were a couple of glitches with the new program that we used, and we'd like to find a better one. So there are a variety of schools that use different systems, and I'd like to investigate that and come up with a new system. And number 3, to update teacher and team web pages on the new district website. This is in here because now that we're team-based, one team has gone already to a site where they have a team page, and then they branch off to their individual pages, and we have the other 2 teams may in fact go that same way. So that's a process that helps parents, because if their child's on a team, they can go to the team page, get general team data, and then they can branch off to the individual teachers instead of going into all of the different teacher websites. And number 4 is to promote the use of X2 Parent Portal among both parents and students. And we'd like to provide our team cards with login instructions, so we're advancing the team cards we issue to the parents at open house, and also send constant contact emails with login instructions 2 weeks prior to issuance of progress reports and report cards. We did a survey, a parent survey this year through school council, and this is one of the things that we realized is that we have low use of the parent portal, and we see a great need to increase the use of the parent portal on X2. Any questions on that page?
can I just ask a general question? Just your opinion. When I look at like the action steps and the indicators of accomplishment, maybe it's just my metacognition kicking in, but it seems like we're just parroting what we're saying, you know, in the action step and the indicators of accomplishment. Is there, because like there was one, when you, the PBIS, you talked about office referrals. Like that's something concrete that you could, you know, you evaluate and you quantify.
Right.
I mean, are you happy with these indicators of accomplishments, the way it's written here? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but, yeah.
Are you talking about the template, or are you talking
I'm talking about this, it's like.
No, I know what you're saying. I know what you're saying. You're saying that I wrote the indicators of accomplishment as meeting the action step.
Right.
Specifically, but what you're saying is you could take it another step further, and I could say that I'd like to reduce the discipline referrals by another 10%, for example.
But I'm just.
To put something more concrete on it.
More measurable.
Measurable.
Yeah, but we're not just saying, like that action step number 1, acquire resources to support. And then it's like we say, resources to support implementation. It's like, we're just saying the same thing, and it's like,
Right.
I'm just not sure where the value is of, well, I know that, but it's like, how do, like, indicators of accomplishment, it's like, what did we accomplish more so? And I guess that's for Kathy and Mike, I guess, on the subcommittee to kick around. But I'm just throwing, it's like, as far as, I'm not sure what value the indicators of accomplishment is to a reader. Because if I already know what you're trying to do, and so, okay, I changed 2 words and it's the same thing as the action step.
But I think if you just remove that whole column, it would take care of the issue.
Absolutely it would.
So
Right.
I think Mike and Kathy will do a great job of having this conversation.
Yeah. All right,
Nice job.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Next, we have the report of the superintendent of schools.
I've accepted the resignation of Kathleen O'Brien as a guidance counselor, accepted the resignation of Cindy Wilson as a special education kindergarten teacher, approved the appointment of Lauren Petrazik as a math teacher at Abington High School, approved the appointment of Samantha Maffeo as a full-time temporary 1-year substitute teacher. I have approved the appointment of the following pre-K to 8 extended school year summer school staff: Karen Henderson as teachers, Karen Henderson, Diane Van Bennick, Yana Hickey, Karen Whitman, Catherine Woodward, Leanne Zarkauskas, Lori Corner, Katrina Park, Adrian Whalen, Angela Daly, Allison Leiden, Samantha Maffeo, Jennifer Whitman, Brittany Yelsey, Kaylin Samsel. And then as a speech and language pathologist, Jenna Pelletier, as Orton Gillingham tutors, Andrea Doyle, Leanne Zarkauskas, paraprofessionals, Brenda Smith, Colleen Greenlaw, Deb Baresh, Janet Campbell, Denise DeRoy, Janet Fitzgerald, Gail Bergen, Jan Odenweller, Nikisha Whitman, Catherine Martin.
With regard to the 2 resignations, have we hired replacements for those 2 resignations?
Not a guidance counselor as yet, that's in process. The special education kindergarten teacher will take place on November 11th, 2014, so not that one yet, and there'll be a transition process there because Cindy Wilson will be with us till November 11th. Did I get?
Yeah.
However, I am, under other matters, pleased to, unless there are other questions, pleased to announce and introduce our new Central Elementary School principal. Laura Monachino has been gracious enough to attend tonight, and let me just give you some background. Laura was with us this last year in Abington, so she's a known quantity, she's a known force. She has chaired student assistance teams in her professional life. She's been a 504 coordinator, an IEP team chair, a behavior specialist. She's a graduate of BU with a degree of master's in social work, and a graduate of Hope College with an undergraduate degree in English and psychology. And if you're willing to come on up, I'm going to introduce you to the school committee, and you can speak for yourself.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having me. And thank you for the nice introduction, Peter. It's Mana Kino.
I said it the wrong way? Sorry.
One game of Kino, remember? Yeah. In any case, I'm very, very happy and honored to be appointed to this position. I'm looking forward to a wonderful first year and many years to come. And to making a contribution to Abington in a new role in the coming year. Thank you very much for having me.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I don't know if you want to describe the process a little bit, didn't you?
Sure, we had a team, a whole entire interview team, and they represented parents as well as teachers, administrators. Kathy Bailey represented the school committee, and we had an evening of a day and a night of interviewing. It was a marathon a little bit. But we had great candidates. And so we're really fortunate that Laura, who has joined Abington ranks this past year, has really been successful in her role and will be able to slide into this position, I think, relatively easily. She's also made a lot of relationships already with staff at the center school, simply in her role this year at the Beaver Brook and transitioning students from the kindergarten into the Beaver Brook for first grade. So that's an added plus. So I'm excited to be working with Laura, and thank you, Kathy, for serving on it. And I know that you have the support of the school committee because they've responded, with their congratulatory responses. So it's exciting.
Welcome.
Okay, so we're under other matters, we're on to number 3 here.
Under other matters, you have a field trip request for the marching band, concert band, concert choir, drawing and painting and portfolio class to go to Orlando, Florida from April 30th to May 3rd in 2015. In the packet of materials that you received the field trip planning form that included who the chaperones are, the dates, the purpose, and as it connects to their objectives and their framework. The documents included where they're going to be staying, how they're going to be getting there, the transportation, the liability, and the cancellation of trip insurance and items such as those. So, if people have any questions about the trip.
But just the material that it was included, say February 26th to March 1st, that was a little confusing. The 4-day proposal, that doesn't match up with what?
Right. Yeah, that may have been an earlier proposal, but the dates on the form are the dates of the trip.
And everything else stays the same, though? It's just a matter of just
That may have been what the company sent to her for previous discussions, but everything is as described. Should be, unless there's another typo on date.
And the 12-to-1 ratio, is that, you comfortable with that?
I am, because of first of all, who's providing it, the age of the students, and then the environment they will be in. Because Disney provides other activities and things that are going on in terms of supervision, and so does World Strides.
So what grades are participating in this?
These are high school students.
9 through 12.
Okay. But as you well know, a 9th grader is a lot different than a senior in high school as far as supervision goes.
Yes, they are.
That's the only reason I asked about the ratio.
Yep.
I spent 11 years chaperoning these trips, 2 of which went to Disney. The music trips are very, very well organized. The students don't have a free minute to do anything that they're not supposed to. Right, John?
I went on the trip, I think 3 or 4 times, and you don't have time to breathe. Really great trip. There's no...
Especially when Mr. and Mrs. Bailey are chaperoning you, right?
Absolutely, Mrs. Bailey.
No influence there.
So we'd be looking for a motion to approve the music department's field trip request to World Strides Heritage Performance in Orlando, Florida from April 30th, 2015 through May 3rd, 2015 as presented.
Second.
Aye. Yep.
You have a request here from Joanne Haley Sullivan, the Executive Director of North River Collaborative, to appoint a member of the school committee as a representative to North River Collaborative. In terms of what the state requires for governance of collaboratives, this is in North River Collaborative's language. At a previous meeting, we talked about how Reed's Collaborative has superintendents serve on these boards. North River Collaborative has a school community member serve on these boards. Different, but the same philosophy in terms of representation. Kathy Bailey has been your representative in previous years.
So we'd be looking for a motion to appoint Kathy Bailey to the North River Collaborative Board of Directors for the 2014-2015 school year.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, Kathy.
And the letter will have to be sent.
The next item is requesting the appointment for me to represent Abington on the board at Project Contemporary Competitiveness. That's the program that our middle school students have the opportunity to go to at Stonehill for a summer program. There isn't a lot of heavy lifting with these programs because it really is self-sustaining and takes care of itself. The big issue these days is that people are busy and they're looking to maybe even roll back on the amount of time the program is running. It seems as though summers are getting shorter for families and families are getting more busy, but this is your representation on that board.
So we'd be looking for a motion to approve Mr. Peter G. Schaefer to serve as a member of the Board of Directors of Project Contemporary Competitiveness for 2014-2015.
Make that motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm sorry, I missed
Thank you.
that. Who made the motion? Sorry.
I did.
Mrs. Bailey, seconded by Paul. Let's see how I have it.
Thanks.
The dates to remember. On Monday, August 4th, there's a tentatively scheduled meeting between the Board of Selectmen and the Building Committee, and a request to have the Abington School Committee have this joint meeting so that the final submission can be crafted and approved in time for submission to the MSBA. This date is getting clearer and clearer, though, as the date that people are going to request that we have this meeting. So just trying to get it out there as much and as often as possible. I know that we perhaps have some conflicts. The problem is that the professional team and the working group have a workflow that's anticipated will be done this first week in August or just before, and then they want to have time to have a public forum to share that with people in the week before, and then people's schedules in the summer are obviously changed. And so I'm hopeful that this is going to work for people, though. There's also the date of July 29th. It's anticipated there would be a question and answer meeting just to make another presentation to the boards in particular, so the boards can ask questions so that they feel there'll be information prior to this meeting that'll be available, but then do a question and answer session on July 29th so that different board members can hear what different boards might ask, so everybody can benefit from that process, so that on August 4th, people would feel comfortable making a decision, voting a decision for a submission, because nothing would be better than for Abington to have 3 boards unanimously decide that this plan is the best plan for Abington. So that's the goal.
And you'll need a vote of all 3 boards in order to make that submission the first week in August.
Right. It doesn't have to be unanimous, but all 3 boards need to carry a majority.
Right, that's the important linchpin in this, is that it can't be submitted to MSBA if one of the 3 boards is unable to meet or doesn't have a quorum. I mean, there needs to be those 3 boards, so trying to figure out the dates around that.
July 29th is 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, both are at 6 o'clock. At this point, it's anticipated to be at the police station because it provides a room big enough for people with the available technology for the meeting. So hopefully we'll have a school building that provides that sort of support for meetings like this. So, on Thursday, August 21st is the new teacher orientation.
Yes.
On August 25th, it's going to be a quick summer. On August 25th is the teachers' meeting. On August 26th, grades 1 through 12 report to school. On August 26th is the first regularly scheduled school committee meeting at 7 p.m.
The report of the Assistant Superintendent of Business and Finance.
Great, thank you. I have before you a proposed job description for the school accountant position. As you may know, our school accountant is planning to retire in September, Paulette Batson, and we have posted the position actually this week, and we'll have about a 2-week window for applicants. And so the job description needed to be updated with current information around what that position entails now. So I have in front of you a job description. I will tell you that I solicited other school districts in the area around their job descriptions for the same position, and through those job descriptions and our responsibilities, this job description was crafted. Anyone have any questions?
Is there a salary range for this position?
Yeah, because the range for the person in the current position was, because the ranges are approved for the position, we have the previous person's salary as the range, or as the approved range. So, because that was previously approved by the committee. There's nothing that they've gotten that wasn't previously approved.
So it's not a range, it's just an amount?
Well, it is a range because it's up to that amount, so I guess you could
Oh,
say.
okay, oh, it's up to, all right.
Right.
Okay,
That doesn't
up
mean
to.
that's what they're getting.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's 0 to that. It won't be 0.
And if you can get someone to come in for 0, you're doing
Can I just, I gotta ask these questions.
Thought you would.
No, as far as position responsibility, it says compliance with fiscal policies, procedures, and controls. Do we have all that stuff documented?
We do. We
Okay.
have, and if we don't, the town, our controls and procedures are in conjunction with the town's controls and procedures. And state, actually. I mean, the bigger part of the state responsibilities around fiscal policies and controls. But we do have written policies, as does the town.
I just thought it was kind of funny when you put it used in modern accounting.
Well,
How old is this thing? Just, number 3, keep all accounts in balance and reconcile balances. What does that mean?
it means that every month, we have our controls around our balances and what we believe where we are, and the town also has theirs, because our accounts, every warrant is then what's called cross-posted to the town. So then the town reconciles their books around how much money they believe has been spent out of the salary account, for example. And every month, those are reconciled against our accounts.
But do you do your own reconciliation on these?
We do so they're really, it's a interesting, and it's like this in every school and town relationship, that the town has it's all one system. The town has kind of their side of the street, and the school has their side of the street, and after the school completes a warrant, it gets walked over to the town side. So it's separate. We have our own accounts. We have our own accounting hierarchy. And then the town actually has different account numbers. Our account numbers are set up by the state
Right.
in a chart of accounts. And those are different than what the town accounts are. So ours gets taken from the school side, and then what's called cross-post to the town account numbers. So at the end of every month, the school accountant takes the report from the town side and reconciles it against her accounts.
Okay. And we never have any issues with that?
Oh, we've
right?
definitely had issues. But the nice, and we've said this, how many times, the nice part is the relationship between the school and the town, and it's a phone call, and it's figured out where it was. Sometimes it's a numbers error, it's an input error, sometimes it's that our account is connected to the wrong account at the town. That happens sometimes if it's a general budget allocation versus a grant, and somehow that account on the town side or the school side is connected to vice versa. So it's making sure that the money's coming out of the right pot.
Okay. Number 6, just enter
S on
warrants.
articles.
Okay. Oh, all right, okay.
Get that.
And we still have petty cash?
We do. A very, very small amount.
Okay.
Very small amount.
$25 or less.
Yeah,
No, I understand, but how come we don't just run it through the payroll?
because that's a 2-week process.
Yeah.
It's a 2-week process, so if there, or 3-week process. So if there's a,
But it's $25 though, right? It just seems like it adds more work for,
You know, an example may be,
Book of stamps. It's
book is-
rarely used, but I shouldn't answer the question. sorry.
no, that's a good, I mean, that's a good example. I was gonna say going into town, no, that's not even one, but a book.
The Pitney Bowes machine is out of stamps, and for some reason, the internet connection isn't making it to have it replenished, and we need to send out
We have-
things
have a
right
book of
away.
stamps.
Because Dr. Thomas has a 3 to 5 day deadline to send something out for special education, so we buy a book of stamps.
didn't plan ahead, huh?
And then what happens is.
Well, it's gotta get out. There's a deadline, it's gotta get out.
And again, it's rarely used, but what happens is if there's, $30 in petty cash, once there's $30 worth of receipts, those are put together, submitted through the warrant, a check for $30 comes back.
I know, it just seems like a lot of work in this for,
It's small money.
yeah, it is.
It isn't, I wouldn't say it's rarely used, but it's something that we have.
If you wanna give us debit cards,
Yeah, it's not
that
gonna
was a joke.
happen.
No, actually, honestly, that is a huge push with the School Business Association, is to go to what they call P cards.
Right.
And purchases are done electronically using P cards with different sets of controls than what we have in place. And things such as buying a book of stamps could be done with the P card.
Because people wanna buy an app for
Right.
for an iPad that is, an app that's gonna make it print, and you've got a presentation coming up, and you didn't realize you needed to buy this 99-cent app. So going to petty cash to buy a 99-cent
yeah.
app, or it's just a whole thing. So if you have
Rather
those
than
cards,
going
you could
through
just-
it, yeah.
Just one last,
Yep.
general question. Number 16, keeps records of conferences and field trips by staff for budgetary purposes.
Yep.
Do we do that already?
We do.
Okay.
We do. And it's actually, it's one of those you don't realize you need it till you need it.
Okay.
Like, it's a calendar in the building, right in our office. We know, today the school psychologists are at a conference, or the data team from the Frolio's at a conference, and you know where people are. And it's a nice control.
All right. And because accountants are such special people, do we provide, like, professional development for them?
What we'll do is, whoever, because our software package is most likely, unless you have municipal school experience in a district that uses KVS, there are other packages that are similar but not the same. And the town hall uses KVS also. There will be an opportunity for training, especially around the software package. We're also planning to there will be an overlap between when the new person starts and Paulette actually retires, to be able to provide that training around how, in Abington, how we put together, how you go about purchasing something, how you go about a warrant, going through a warrant process. And the other thing is, if you walk into the accountant's office, behind her is an entire wall of binders that is the paper backup to every dime that's been spent out of a special account. And so knowing what all those accounts are, and knowing where the records, that's going to be an important piece of that. The other big part is closing out a fiscal year and opening a fiscal year. And while this person won't have started when this current fiscal year ends and the new one starts June 30th and July 1st, they will be here at the beginning of the school year, and we'll be able to see the kind of the ramping up of how things really ramp up in the end of August and the beginning of July.
So what would we-
And one other piece that's an important part of that is the collection of information for the fiscal end of the year report. That's done in August and then put together in September.
So what will be the overlap time?
We're looking probably about 3 weeks.
Oh, okay, all
3
right.
weeks. So our tentative timeline is that the position has been posted with applications due June 27th, with a review of applications that week of July 4th. We're looking to have interviews July 8th and 9th, or 9th and 10th, the middle of that following week, be a recommendation to the superintendent. And then between people having to give notice at their current job, et cetera, to have a start date somewhere in the middle of August, so that they're here before the teachers and students get back, and have a good, I'd like them to go through 2 payrolls, 2 warrants, 2 So it'll be a 3 or 4 week overlap. And I will be looking, once we establish a tentative schedule around interviews for people that would like to sit on that committee.
Do we do, well, as far as a background check on this, do we do any more as far as maybe a financial history background on someone in this position, or do we just do a standard background check?
I think we do a standard background check, and, obviously, I would think the reference check would be pretty, a very important component of this. But I know that Town Hall recently has hired a new town accountant in the last 2
Right.
years, and I will double check on their process as well.
Yeah, as long as we're consistent with
Yep.
sort of how the town does it, because you know how sometimes the background checks and the references, it's like, they don't sometimes tell you anything for
Correct.
liability, so.
Yep. And if they've come from the school or town world, it's a pretty small world.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
So,
But I never feel comfortable until at least a year goes by, and then
Sure.
somebody's been in a job and
yeah.
they performed well, so. Just how I get nervous about appointments, because, and I know, Felicia, you feel this way about the person who's leaving has been superior.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Paulette Batson's retirement is a loss to the Abington Public Schools. As, I mean, all of our retirements are big losses in a lot of history for those positions. So.
So we'd be looking for a motion to approve the job description for the school accountant as presented.
Second.
All in favor?
Yep.
Thank you.
So we have the new business establishing the next school committee meeting. And as Peter mentioned, Monday, August 4th would be the combined meeting with the Board of Selectmen as well as the Abington School Building Committee. It's Monday, August 4th at 6 p.m. at the police station.
And once that's confirmed, we'll confirm that. Sorry. Sure, I can do that under informational items.
And then our back-to-school meeting, August 26th at 7 p.m. It was a quick summer.
That's kind of a really unfair.
Really quick summer. Here at 7 p.m.
A couple of informational items, just the first one I just want to point out is that the NAEP, the National Assessment of Educational Progress, is going to be conducted at both the Beaverbrook Elementary School and the Frollo in this coming year. That's about 90 minutes of testing, they say, per group of students. That's the test that the government gives to different schools across the country that provides the information that tells us that Massachusetts is the #1 performing state in the nation. So this is the same test that they use coast to coast, randomly across school districts. There'll be other districts in Massachusetts that are taking this test, and it's just Beaverbrook and Frollo's turn for this next year. And then the other thing, which is not on this list of informational items, I don't know, we had someone who mentioned the attending colleges. It was requested we put that. Kathy, did you want to talk about that?
Well, we have a list in our packet, and I don't know where I put it. Abington High School sent their students to many prestigious colleges. The class of 2014 served us proud, and we have a long list of schools. I don't know if you want me to read through them, or?
We post them on the cable, we run it, and it's
Yeah.
been sent an email, and so.
But a very, very impressive list of schools that our graduating seniors have gone to. I should say graduated, or took place.
The only other item I have is that we've found a director of technology for the Abington Public Schools. We had a committee that met and interviewed a number of people. Do you want to describe that process at all, Felicia?
Sure. We had an interview committee made up of teachers, principals, technology staff, and school committee. We interviewed 7 candidates. From those 7 candidates, we forwarded one finalist to the superintendent for an interview this week.
And because I only had one, I really crossed my fingers that this would work out, because you only need one person. Although it's a competitive pool, once people had great faith in Richard Bykowski, who has served the Weymouth Public Schools for a number of years as a technology person, so he brings a lot of experience in this area. And so this is just fresh information, so you'll get more of his background information at a subsequent meeting. But I want to make sure the committee knew that we had, that was the selected candidate. So.
And Mike served on that.
Yep.
That's all I have.
If I can just add on the new business, the meeting dates, the subcommittee for the policy and protocol, we'll be meeting on July 9th at 3:30. It's action-packed, and, you know, it's a must attend, as far as I'm concerned.
ASC, like early bird for the fall conference, if anyone's interested. We can wait on it, but there's a discount if people know for sure they want to go. I can sign them up in July. Wait until August, it's not until November.
Yeah, in your packet is information on the also on the library summer reading program. And Deb Grimmett was going to come and present this, and I told her that I would provide it under informational to you. I mean, the informational items you have here are significant, so there's nothing that needs to be considered or requires any action, but it's really important, I think, that you know what's going on. So the way that we partner with the Abington Public Library to provide a summer reading program is here. Results and data on the success we had last year is here, and then what the Abington Public Library intends to do for both our elementary and our high school students in terms of summer reading for this coming year. And then also, you know, is a memo from our Abington School Building Committee, just updating people. But I really think you already are aware of the news from the Abington School Building Committee.
All set? At this point, we can adjourn the meeting.
Second?
All in favor?
Hi.
Thank you.